Radio 161, great to make the hookup there, Matt.
User about.
Yeah, Matt, J. Juliet Alpha Yankee was my name for your further information.
Hi, this is CBRadioMagazine.com, and today we're going to take a look at the Magnum International UTB-1, which is a Universal Talkback Board that they manufacture. This is a Universal Talkback Board, and it adds talkback to any radio. Basically, you can install this in any CB radio. A lot of people will do what we call the poor man's talkback, which is to add a resistor or a variable pot off of the CB PA and external speaker jacks, and that works on quite a few radios, but there's also quite a few radios where that doesn't work. Magnum 257s, RCI 2950DX radios, Uniden 640E, PC122s, etc. All those radios, that type of modification won't work to give you talkback. So in those cases, the UTB-1 is a great type of board to install because you can bypass a couple things and it adds talkback to any type of radio. So we're going to go through the install today. It's fairly simple in the hookup. It comes with instructions. You can see that there's a small board. It has a bunch of wires that you're going to attach to different places on the radio, and then it has a control pot, as you can see with the knob on it, that you'll be installing as well. So we'll have to pick a place where we want to install that on the radio so we can control the talkback on or off once we're in the vehicle. So let's get started. Okay, we removed it from the packaging. As you can see, it's a small board. The board itself is just a little circuit board, and it's got the different pots and pieces on it. And here is the control pot. Now the difference between this type of talkback board and just doing your standard talkback is this actually has a little audio amp on it, so it does have voltage running into it, and it can boost the audio that way, and that's kind of what provides the variable talkback and also the higher quality of talkback. This is going to be a lot higher quality talkback than you get from just doing a resistor or adding just the pot and bridging the PA and external speaker jack. So that's why there's a benefit to running this type of board. This is your pot for your control, and once this is installed, obviously you can adjust it on or off all the way up or down. These are going to be your wires for hookup, and there's quite a few, but don't be discouraged because it's not that difficult in terms of where the wires go. We've removed the top cover of the radio. The first step in installing this is we do have to do a little work on the circuit board side. The particular radio we're working on is Uniden Grant LT, and this is one of many that I have that's been pretty hacked up, changed hands lots of times over the years before I got to it. So been lots of different things. It looks like there was a resistor installed here a couple different times. I've actually removed the last one that was here. And so someone had bridged this gap previously to add talkback to this radio. This particular radio, the PA circuit isn't working anyway, so that's why it's a good candidate just to try out with the UTB-1. And what we'll do is identify where the external speaker jack is on this radio. So it's going to be right in this position on the back of the radio here. And we're going to locate 3 points where it's soldered into the board. There's going to be 1 point here, 1 point here, and 1 point here. So there's 3 areas where it's soldered to the board. Side section we're not going to be worried about, we're not going to use. This front section is where we're going to connect one of our wires from the UTB board, and the second position is going to be this little location right here. Now, the thing they ask you to do when installing UTB is we actually have to cut the trace that runs from this section over here to this. And what we will do is we'll just cut out the little trace off of the circuit board right here, and that will disconnect this portion of the radio as it comes into here from this portion of the external speaker jack. And that allows us to run one wire here and one wire here and unconnected, and that's how the UTB-1 will work. So I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so not the prettiest work, but we removed the trace. All we did was we just took an X-Acto knife and we just made a little sliver of a cut here, and then we just used a small screwdriver head and we just popped it out, just scraped along, and just a little piece of metal is going to pop out, and that's all you need to remove. And we know it's worked because we can turn on the radio now and we have no sound out of the external speaker jack. And actually, if you want to test it, if you get a small little wire and just clip both ends of the wire, turn on the radio and you connect one end here and other end here, you'll hear the speaker come back, so you'll know that you've cut it correctly. So now we know we've cut our trace and we're ready to proceed with the rest of our install. Okay, in the next step we're going to attach the yellow and orange wire from the UTB talk board. We've found a little spot. We're going to install the board on the other side of the radio, and so we found a little spot where they'll come through and just make sure they're not going to be interfering with anything necessarily. And you can connect the yellow wire to this point that's on this side of the trace that we cut, and you'll connect the orange wire to the back end. Remember, we have 3 points, 1, 2, 3, and it's this third point right here. So once again, we cut the trace right in here. We're going to attach the yellow wire to this point and the orange wire to this point. Okay, so we've run our orange wire and we've run our yellow wire, and these are the 2 points on the external speaker jack. One last step is at the back here, where this point connects to the board for the external speaker jack, we do need to run a wire to ground. So we've just run a short little wire here. There's a screw here that was grounded to the casing over here, and so that's a ground point. And so we've just grounded this point here to here. So orange to here, yellow to here on this side of where we've cut the trace. We've run our wire from here at the back of the external speaker plug to a ground point, and now we can move on to the black ground wire. Okay, the next step is to install a black ground wire. There's a black coax wire coming off the control. It's actually got 2 wires kind of coming out of it. You're not going to be using that one. You're going to be using the black wire. It's just a wire by itself, and that's our ground wire. So we're going to have to ground that. And they mentioned in the instructions you can go to the strap around the modulations transformer or the input choke near the radio's power connection. So we've decided just to ground right here. This is near our power connection at the back where the power comes in. This is going to be our positive side, this is our negative side, and we just went up here to this little location where the chokes are grounded, and we've just grounded right there. Okay, the next thing we need to do is attach the red power wire to voltage. And you want it to be on-off voltage, so the voltage only turns on when the radio turns on. You don't want it constantly supplying voltage. So our on-off knob on this radio actually is right in here, right up in the bottom corner of your picture here. That's the on-off control knob, and there's a little board here on the Uniden Grant LT. And the power comes in right here, and the on-off, as you turn the radio on, it provides power to the rest of the radio through this point on the circuit board. And you can see there's already a red wire coming in. That's a wire that runs to RF limited TRB-X2 echo board that was installed in this radio. So we've just attached right on the other side, same point, and that provides power to our talkback board. So we got the red wire attached to our 12 volt connection here on-off for the radio. Alright, this one might be a little tricky to see, but there's a green wire that comes off the UTB board, and that green wire needs to go to the push to talk location from your microphone pin wiring. So when your microphone pin comes in, you have to figure out whatever radio you're working on, what the push to talk location is on the microphone plug, and then you'll need to solder this green wire to that. On this particular radio, because it has the TRB board into it, the wires that come off of that already have gone to the PTT. So we had to make a little room on the side here, and we wired in the green wire on the side of the PTT switch. And you'll see on this radio, the microphone plug comes into a circuit board where it attaches. On other radios, the microphone back of the microphone plug will actually be exposed, and it won't be a circuit board. You can go right onto those pins. So this is what we've done in this case. We've just attached it there on the side and made a little room for it. Okay, they call this the coaxial cable. It's got a little black wire and a white wire. The black wire we are not going to be using. We've just taped it off to the main wire. And the white wire, this wire would connect to your audio on the mic pin. So you'd find out which one's your audio. In this case, it's pin number 1. But because the audio is going into the echo board, it wouldn't make sense to install this in front of the echo board because we want to be able to hear the echo. So what we've done is we've located where the echo audio out comes out of the echo board, and we're going to install this white wire there. So this is RF limited echo board, and as you can see, we just installed that white wire to the audio out location on the board. So this is where the audio comes out on the white wire here on one of the cables running into where we've got it connected to the board. We've just gone straight into the echo board. So we've now made all of our connections, and we're ready to install the knob and test it out. Now for the mounting location for the knob on this radio, we've decided to go through the side case. We've picked a spot where the actual pot is not going to be touching any other parts, and it's going to be fairly out of the way. We've drilled through the inside casing of the radio. We've mounted our nut, and then we actually had to drill a hole in our outside casing as well. And I'll show you what the finished product looks like when we install it. So you need to make sure you drill your hole so you can go through both pieces. And you need to make sure that when you do it, you have to be able to put the case on sideways. So what you do is with the hole in the casing on the outside case, you'll slide it on and then snap the case down over the other side of the radio. And that's the way you can get the case back on without much difficulty. Now the actual board itself, it doesn't have a mounting location screw like our Echo board would, and so what you have to do is just find a place either to mount it with some two-sided tape, or probably what we'll do is wrap this up in just some electrical tape, and or if you have a big piece of heat shrink tubing, you can fit it over it and heat shrink it, and then just zip tie it with some other wires inside the radio so it doesn't contact anything that it's not supposed to contact. Okay, so this might be a little blurry. One thing we did run into at the end here was with going through the case side of the radio and then also through the internal case and then the outside case on the outside here, this knob isn't quite big enough because you'll see there's a gap in between where it actually connects. So we have two options. We could either take a hacksaw and just trim off the bottom section, or we actually have a knob off the face of another radio that actually slides right on there and goes flush, so it looks nicer that way. Something we weren't really expecting to run into, but just one of those funny things that happens when you install some of these. Now if you installed this in another location, like say you went out the bottom of the speaker cover or something, you wouldn't run into that problem because you're not running through two pieces of metal, just one. So just something to be aware of. Okay, we finished our install. You can see this radio had an echo control already installed here on this location, and we installed our talkback control on the side here since this was already used up on the face and we didn't want to remove any of the other knobs. Now obviously on other radios there's places where you can include it on the knobs rather than trying to go through the case, which presented us with the problem of having the knobs not quite fit with the normal knobs, so we just used one off another radio. So it seems to work pretty well here. What we've got is our control here in the counterclockwise position all the way. It's off, 1 2 3 1 2 3, and no talkback coming out. We've put it up into a little bit higher position. 1 2 3 1 2 3 audio test, talkback test. And as you can see, the talkback is now working. We can hear our echo through the radio, which is kind of the point for a lot of people with these. If we turn it up too high, you'll get some feedback. And obviously that's part of the variable control ability of the pot, which is nice for this radio. The talkback does work in all modes. 1 2 3. Okay, that was sideband, so it does work in sideband as well. So a neat little thing to install on a radio, not too difficult. Does require a little bit of soldering, and you do have to cut the trace, which is something that a lot of people probably haven't done when it comes to radios, but it's fairly easy to do. Talkback board, all mode, very good quality. Obviously, for those of you who've done the Poor Man Talkback mod before, you know in sideband it sounds terrible usually, and so this, nice, it works in sideband, and definitely for a lot of people who have echoes or on those radios where you can't install the Poor Man's Talkback, this is a nice alternative. So from RF Limited Magnum, the UTB-1 Talkback board, and hope you enjoyed the video.